Hey, what's going on, guys? Brian from Zombie Guitar here. This is part 3 of the modes series. Okay, so part 1 was the Ionian, part 2 was the Dorian, and part 3 is now the Phrygian mode. So what I was playing in the beginning, the demo, that was purely Phrygian mode. Alright? A Phrygian to be more exact. All of the modes that we are doing in this series are all going to be A type modes. A Ionian, A Dorian, A Phrygian, A Lydian, and so on. Okay, so this was the A Phrygian mode. So let's get started by taking a look at the scale formula. Okay, so again, starting off with the major scale. Your major scale formula is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In order to get the natural minor scale, you would flatten the 3rd, 6th, and 7th degrees. Okay, so this, what you see here, is your natural minor scale formula. 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. Okay, so now in order to get the Phrygian mode, you simply take the 2nd degree and then you flatten that as well. Alright, so the scale formula for the Phrygian mode is, as you can see here, 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, flat 7. So it's the same thing as the natural minor scale, except for that one additional flattened note. And of course, that one additional flattened note is what gives the Phrygian mode its unique sound, its unique feel, okay? It's got a very exotic type sound to it. I guess you could describe it as almost like Spanish flamenco sounding type music, okay? So let's just do a quick comparison of what it sounds like. Just the one octave of the Phrygian mode sounds like in comparison to the natural minor scale. Alright, so first we'll start off with the natural minor scale, which is this. Okay, there's your natural minor scale. Now we'll flatten that 2nd degree and we'll play the Phrygian mode. Okay, so okay, so that one note you hear, that really makes a difference. So then you can take this and play in 2 octaves. Let's hear how that sounds. Okay, so you can hear it as, you can hear the sound of the Phrygian mode just by walking through the scale itself, okay? So that's the scale formula, and that's how it's related to the natural minor scale. Now, let's take a look at some common uses you may find for this. Alright, so typical uses for the Phrygian mode. If you take a look at the notes of the A Phrygian mode, you can build some chords off it, okay? Just like you would if you were to build chords from your major scale or build chords from your minor scale. You would look at the 7 notes of the scale, and then you would see what chords can be built using those 7 notes. That's how this stuff works. So looking at the notes of the A Phrygian mode, which is what we're doing in this lesson, you have A, then you have B flat, then you have C, D, E, F, G. So it's the same as the A minor scale, the A natural minor scale, the only difference being that flattened 2nd degree, as I already talked about. So if you were going to build chords from these 7 notes, you're going to have some interesting chords that come up, okay? One in particular is, take a look at the second degree, which is what makes the Phrygian, okay? Take a look at that second degree and then build a chord from that. You see the B flat? Well, you take the B flat, the D, and the F, the result is a B flat major chord. Okay, so B flat in relation to A would be considered a flat 2. Alright? The reason it's called a flat 2 is because all scale formulas are in relationship to the major scale. Okay? So if we were to look at the major scale, there's just a 2 there. Okay, so this is now a flat 2. It's only 1/2 step away from the first note, okay? So, and it's a major flat 2, okay? And then looking at the one chord, A, okay, build a chord from A, you have A, C, and E. Okay, so you have a one chord that's minor, and then you have a 2 chord that's major. Okay, so you hear that chord movement quite often in flamenco type music. Okay, so just that half step movement, that right there, when you see that type of movement present, a minor chord followed by a 1/2 step away major chord, that is an instance where the Phrygian mode could be applied. Alright? Now, and that's what I was doing in the beginning demo. I was just playing over those 2 chords. Alright? Now, Phrygian, it's kind of hard to fit in other places. I mean, you can build chords from the other 5 scale degrees. You're going to come up with some interesting chords that you don't usually see. For instance, the 5 is going to be a half diminished chord. But as I said in the Dorian mode lesson, modes other than the Ionian and Aeolian, the other 5 modes typically are not used in full chord progressions. They're typically only used in like chord vamps, okay? Or just kind of like drone notes. So if for some reason, you know, the music cut out for a while and the chord progression stopped and we were just kind of doing an A over and over and over, just kind of droning on the A note, you could maybe throw the Phrygian in there. But again, you want to be careful. You don't want to land on non-chord tones when you're using this scale over top of a drone note. Okay, so if you're just doing it over a 1 chord or a 1 note drone, and it's just playing, and you're just playing your A Phrygian, you're gonna find that the non-chord tones actually sound bad, but they sound pretty good and unique and interesting when used as passing tones. Okay, so these will be your chord tones. Okay, and then you can use the rest of the scale as your framework to walk between those chord tones. Okay, so I'm kind of like landing on the chord tones, but using the Phrygian mode as, you know, as the basis for allowing me to walk from one chord tone to the next. So that's how it would be used if you were to just kind of play over a 1 note or a 1 chord drone. If you were to play it over, you know, both the minor 1 chord and the major 2 chord, like I was doing in the beginning, you have a little bit more leeway to really use the scale. So in that case, you can actually kind of, yes, you can target chord tones. You can target chord tones of the minor 1 and target chord tones of the major 2, but you can also kind of land on other non-chord tones and it'll sound okay. Okay, so really the point I'm trying to get across here is when you're using the Phrygian mode, when you see that minor 1 and the major 2 right next to each other, that's a very good spot to use this. Okay, it's probably the easiest way to use this. All right, so let me just do an example and play in just one position. I'm just going to play in the one position here. Okay, A Phrygian, the tonality is A. Everything's revolving around A. but I'm going to be playing it over that A minor to the B flat major chord. So let's hear how that sounds. Okay, so I was landing on chord tones a lot there, but I wasn't landing on chord tones every time, which is kind of what I was trying to demonstrate. So you can kind of, if you want, you can walk through these scale patterns. Non-chord tones are going to sound bad when you land on a non-chord tone and you really hold that note out and the chord isn't occurring under that. However, you can use non-chord tones to just kind of quickly walk through the scale, such as okay. But if you just kind of land on non-chord tones, then that's when the Phrygian mode is going to sound bad. Okay, and the same thing is going to apply when you're just playing this over a one note or a one chord drone. Okay, if you choose to play the Phrygian mode over just a minor chord, okay, if you're going to land on a tone and kind of hold out that tone, then you want that to be a chord tone of the underlying chord. But you can use the rest of the Phrygian mode or Phrygian scale, whatever you want to call it, if you're just going to be quickly walking through. Okay, so as temporary passing tones, this works. It'll give you an exotic sound. But as landing tones within the Phrygian mode, you want to kind of focus on the chord tones. All right, so that's the use of the Phrygian mode. The best advice I can give for this is simply use your ear. Okay, you're going to know when stuff sounds bad. Okay, so if you're trying to fit the Phrygian mode over something and it's just not working, well, the answer is that you probably shouldn't be using the Phrygian mode in that instance then. Okay, if you find that the Phrygian mode is working, which is the case when you see a minor 1 chord followed by a major flat 2 chord like this, well then go ahead and use it, and use your ear to guide you of which tones to use within the scale. Okay, so here you have the Phrygian mode spanned over the whole fretboard. Alright, right here's the one pattern we've been working in, right here on the 5th to 8th fret area. Okay, so right there, and then of course all these other patterns are the same 7 notes. Okay, your tonal center, the colored note that you see is A. All the colored notes are A. All the rest of the notes still are just other patterns of this same 7 notes: A, B flat, C, D, E, F, and G. All right, but if you find that you are confused with the Phrygian mode and you don't want to learn a whole new scale, you can always apply the same trick that I went over in part 2, the Dorian mode. You can always find one of its relatives that you are comfortable with and then think of it in those terms, but of course you want to keep your tonal center revolved around A. Okay, so in this case, our relatives, this is A Phrygian. If you look up here, you see that you have just your minor scale pattern. Okay, so this is a relative of D minor. All right, the D minor scale and A Phrygian contain the same notes. Also, the F major scale. Okay, the F major scale contains the same notes as the Phrygian. Okay, just like D minor and F major are relative to one another and they contain the same notes. Well, it's the same thing for A Phrygian. This also contains the same notes. So, if you're very fluent in soloing on the, within the key of D minor up and down the neck of the fretboard, then you already know your patterns. You already know how the patterns are related to each other. But you just want to keep in mind that your tonal center is not D. This is not the D minor scale, even though you may be thinking in terms of those patterns. This is still the A Phrygian mode. Okay, so your tonal center is always going to revolve around A, no matter what patterns you're using. Okay, so let's try and do a quick musical demo of the Phrygian mode spanned over the whole fretboard. All right. So I'm going to start up here using this. I know this box very well, so let's try that out. Alright, so what I was doing there, utilizing more than just one pattern on the fretboard, was trying to kind of demonstrate how I was playing within, if you're used to playing major and minor scales, otherwise known as the full diatonic scale spanning across the fretboard, if you're used to those patterns, you can still use the same patterns that you're familiar with because they're the same exact thing. Okay, but the tonal center is now shifted to A. This is A Phrygian. A Phrygian has its own sound. It's got that Spanish, exotic sound to it. The tonal center is A. So within these patterns, you may have been taught this as the F major scale pattern. Okay, but your tonal center is not F. Your tonal center is A. Okay, so the same pattern applies, or you may have been taught this as the D minor scale. But your tonal center is not D, your tonal center is A, so. Alright, and yeah. And then when the B occurs, the B is only 1/2 step away from the A. So if you find A, if you know where the A is at, it's not hard to find the B flat. That's what I meant to say, B flat. It's on 1/2 step up. But anyway, I think I got my point across. This is the tonality of the Phrygian mode. Phrygian mode is used best, when you see that minor 1 chord followed by a major 2 chord. More often than not, you kind of want to target the chord tones of whatever chords you're using this with, but you can use the full Phrygian scale. You can use all the notes of the mode or the scale as your framework, so long as they're walking notes or passing notes, okay? But if you're going to hold on notes, more often than not, you kind of want to do chord tones, all right? So that's it for the Phrygian mode. It's kind of a tricky one to use, but just use your ear. So that's going to be it for this lesson. If I was confusing, if I left anything out, feel free to hit me up and I'll get back to you. All right, so stay tuned for part 4, the Lydian mode. All right, thanks a lot.